guys, I'm Caroline Downey, hopping on my pal Paul Morrow's page today to talk about what's buzzing in the media, Zohran Mamdani's Democratic primary win in New York City, and specifically why Gen Z drove so much of his support and momentum. You've seen the headlines by now. Gen Z is falling under the spell of socialism, and I think there's a number of motivating factors as a representative of Gen Z myself. The first is that we're a very financially anxious generation. We're not so sure collectively that home ownership will be attainable in our lifetimes. It's not uncommon to hear cynicism and pessimism from Gen Z on social media directed towards older generations. You'll see memes like, the baby boomers in 1970 something or other bought their first home for 3 raspberries, and we can't even get out of our shoebox apartment because we feel like we've been priced out of the real estate market. We see how home prices, how their values have appreciated so dramatically over the years, and of course that is to the benefit of our parents and grandparents, but that is a high barrier to entry for us. So that has generated financial resentment and fear that I think contributes to what we find enticing politically. Add to this the COVID pandemic fallout. Obviously, everybody suffered from the draconian government response to COVID throughout all of the states, but Gen Z, I think, bore the brunt of this socially, academically, psychologically. In most states, there were government shutdowns and there were school shutdowns. Much of Gen Z suffered some degree of learning loss in major academic subjects: math, reading, literacy, phonics, arithmetic. And our academic performance outcomes are proof of that. It's in the gutter. And the learning we did have during those very turbulent, disruptive years was infected with propaganda. What is being taught essentially is that socialism is kind of cool, even though it's communism on training wheels. They're glossing over the death and destruction of epic proportions that has been associated with socialism, from Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution in communist China, to Hugo Chavez, to the Castros in communist Cuba, Stalin's gulags. Across the board, the legacy of communism has been atrocity and tyranny and oppression and equal opportunity misery, even though the promise was, of course, equity and equality. And the schools are also not teaching why capitalism actually works. I have a degree in economics, so I benefited from a foundational understanding of the free market, going back to economic philosophers and early political theorists like John Locke, who observed very aptly that capitalism is the most effective way to channel our default setting as humans, which is to be selfish. It's a way to channel our self-interest into productive ends and, frankly, moral ends, because trade and bartering and just the free market system fosters actually a lot of harmony and goodwill. This isn't taught to Gen Z as well. So they're falling for the fool's gold that Zohran Mamdani is putting forward. Some of it sounds very benign. His biggest pitch to Gen Z was affordability, which I'll give him credit. Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, they didn't really talk about the high cost of living, which is definitely crushing Gen Z in New York City. They didn't talk about rent prices and how exorbitant that is, how much inflation has really hurt us at the grocery store. Zohran Mamdani did, but that's only the tip of the iceberg of what this guy actually believes. Rent control, which again, for Gen Z, we're constantly shopping, as Carrie Bradshaw said in Sex and the City, for a new boyfriend, a new job, or a new apartment. And part of why we're always searching for a new apartment is because landlords tend to raise the rent every year. If they don't, it seems miraculous. But rent control in practice is actually going to exacerbate the housing shortage that Gen Z is also pretty worried about. It penalizes the landlord. It gives them no incentive to invest in the maintenance of the building. It's inhibiting them from making money. It's capping how much profit they can actually make. They're not going to take care of the buildings, and in fact, they might ask tenants to leave because it's not in their business interest to keep that going. Gen Z loves to talk about how they want to empower the little guy and the marginalized, and they care about community. Government-run grocery stores is going to backfire and have the opposite effect. It's going to corner the other mom and pop shops and small grocery stores in the vicinity which are often owned by immigrants. Those are hardworking New Yorkers that are also trying to make it. Most of this is lost on Gen Z because they didn't have the rigorous examination of these kinds of policies. As you can see, there's a number of factors that conspired together to make it more likely that Gen Z would find socialism and Zohran Mamdani alluring. We were primed from this from a young age in the school system. It's not entirely our fault. Gen Z also cares about aesthetics and presentation. Zohran Mamdani was pretty good at this, whether it was his man on the street interviews throughout New York City. He was shaking hands with residents, actually interacting with his potential constituents, whether it was his merch making parties that were very influencer friendly, his TikTok savviness, even his retro branding and the font that he uses. But that's somewhat superficial of an understanding of why Gen Z actually supported Mamdani. The financial malaise mixed with economic illiteracy, frankly, is really why you got what we got. And I'm afraid if we don't fix those underlying causes, this trend is only going to continue to grow.